it.
If you're looking for some crazy, I'll tell you everybody's standing in a line for the water slide. You can come on over, we can take the roller coaster. And you know everybody's looking for a ride in the water slide. Water slide. Surfing on a wave of good feelings.
Well, welcome everyone. Show is just about to start. We had a bit of a pre-show. If you don't want to watch all of the news stories today, I will put a timeline down below. So you can basically just go to the story which interests you. So, just let me know what you'd like to do. Now, if you have any questions, obviously it's always good if you're here in the live show, but if you're not in the live show, please leave them down below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I always read every comment that's put in there and usually answer to nearly all of them. So please leave some comments as well. If you are in the show now, I'd love it if you could give a thumbs up. It does make a massive difference to getting the show out there. So please give a thumbs up, especially like I said, seeing I'm not sponsored, anything helps. So I'd love that if you could give me a big thumbs up. And obviously, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Got some really interesting stories to talk about today. A few more rumours about the A7S release and a couple of other cameras too. We're even going to talk about the Canon 1DX versus the A9 II as well. So we've got a few things that we can talk, and also about a new vlogging camera that we can also discuss as well. So we've got stacks to sort of talk about today, which should be quite interesting, I think. We had a brief introduction at the beginning where I said hello to everyone. Obviously, if you're in the live chat, fire away with live chats. After each story, I do come back usually to the live chat as well. And then at the end, we have a Q&A session as well, where it's sort of open to everything that you'd like to throw in there. So that's about it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start with the first story because we've got a little bit to cover here. So let me pop over to this page. And this is a petapixel report. So let me just put in here the time we're at, which is 12:03. So this is a story from Petapixel. Now, this is taken off the Sony Alpha Rumours site, so I thought I'd show you this as we go through it. But it's talking about that Sony will be unveiling a new full-frame mirrorless camera in June. And this is interesting. Like, we all thought this was going to happen the other day, but that, when we had that shocking Sony announcement that was like watching concrete drying. It was terrible. Anyway, all they really released it was more for video-centric things. So that didn't give us anything if you were waiting for a new Sony mirrorless camera or anything like that. But apparently, they're saying that we could have a new full-frame mirrorless camera is going to be announced in June. Now, we know that Sony Alpha posted a link not long ago to show that there was a new camera that was registered. So we do know something's coming, but we don't know what that is. And that could be that new camera I'll talk about later on, which is for vloggers. Now, it may be that one. We don't know at this stage what's going to be released. But this article is talking about that they're saying that they think it's going to be announced in June, and then it will come out, well, from what I've heard, is around about September. And I'll talk about that when we go to the next story, which talks about the quite a few rumours that Sony have got coming out at the moment. So this is two reports coming from Sony Alpha Rumours, who says they are finally receiving leaks of what to come from trusted sources, they're saying. And it says the first report that's coming out is claiming that the A7S will arrive in late June, with shipping expected to start in late summer. Now, that'd be the US late summer, wouldn't it? So that'd be sort of, probably say late August, September-ish, around that time, they're sort of saying. At least one new full-frame camera and at least one new full-frame lens in June. And they're talking about a 12 to 24 millimeter 2.8 G Master lens is going to be the lens that's announced as well. So it's really interesting if you're looking at that, what they're saying there. And they're saying, given the overlapping nature of this information, it's fair to speculate that the full-frame camera in question is the A7S III, though it could be an A7 IV as well. Now, this is the interesting thing that we've discussed here before, that we know a camera is going to be coming, and we're not sure yet what that will be. And I'm still in two minds about whether we will even get an A7S. And I've discussed this with you before, that it may be the A7 IV that's released. And I'll show you this in a minute. They're sort of saying in another rumor that there may be two variations coming out, an A7S, which is high spec, and an A7 IV, which is a lower spec version. And we'll talk about that soon. But let's have a look anyway at what they're saying about that, because I'm not going to come back to the Q&A yes at this stage, because I want to go through some other specs rumours that have been announced. So let me come back over to here and show you this. Now, this is a roundup of rumours, and they're saying there's a number of sources that they've got, and they're talking about what will be released. So I'm going to go through a few of these. All these links will be in the box below, so you can check the links out if you'd like to have a look at the links for these. But they're saying here that the first source is saying that the A7S III will announce in late September, early October. So that's contradicting that other story that just came out where they said it was going to be announced in June and then released in sort of the end of summer, which will be September. What they're saying here in the source is that it's going to be announced in September, early October, and then obviously it will be probably coming out around about November, December. That probably makes more sense to me as we're still coming out of lockdown. I think that, to me, would make a little bit more sense if they were going to announce something at the moment, due to the fact of how many of us have actual money at this stage to buy anything anyway. So, you know, it's going to be an interesting thing about that one. So this will sort of expand as we go down. The next source is saying that I don't think Sony has an A7000. So they're saying now that they don't think there's going to be an A7000. In the near future, they're talking about actually, and any high pixel machines at all. I don't expect anything from Sony for the APS-Cs. Not to mention the reason that due to the insufficient construction period and priority delivery to large customers, the original, it's a 2.9 UM FY20 Sony semiconductor that they also released is delayed as well. So let alone full frame 100 megapixel and APS-C 44 megapixel. So what they're saying here is that obviously due to the virus, that the sensor has been delayed, their sensors have been delayed, and also they're saying that there'll be no high-end Sony full-frame camera, and there'll be no APS-C camera either that's released. So that's another source which is really interesting, and I hadn't thought about an APS-C camera being released for a little while. I mean, if you look at it, they released the A6600 not long ago, so that's sort of fairly current. The interesting thing as well is the only thing it's missing is in the video specs. Like if you compare it to the XT4 and cameras like that, the Sony is way under spec'd. So I still do think Sony have to release something that can sort of compete with, say, the Fuji cameras and stuff like that, because at this stage, they're not really in the game if you look at what they've got compared to that. Still-wise, yes, but if you're dealing with, say, and remember, a lot of people use the A6400s for vlogging and stuff like that. If you're dealing with that, well, the Sony camera is a little bit under-spec'd compared to, say, the Fuji. So I'm surprised that nothing is sort of coming in the rumours about that at all. But like I said, everything is delayed. So that's source 2. Source 3 has said the next lens could be a 28 1.4 GM or a 300 2.8. Now, I believe the 300 2.8 because that probably is now delayed due to the fact that the Olympics is now next year. What is it, July, I think, next year? There's probably no hurry for a 300 GM at this stage. I think if the Olympics were this year, that lens probably would have already been announced. So I'm sure it's probably there in development. Remember, it is a lens that's missed, particularly if you're a sports or a wildlife shooter, and that would be a perfect lens to have for the Olympics. So I'm pretty sure that probably will be released sometime early next year so that everyone has that for the Olympics. The 28 1.4, I don't believe that is the case because I think that's too close to the 24. I'd love to know your opinion as well about what you think about that, but I think that's a little bit close to the 24 mil, and I don't think there's a need for that. I would be hoping if the 12 to 24 GM seems like it would be a really nice lens to have, but I would still love them to release a wide angle GM, something like a 12 millimeter, something like that. Gilbert said the 28 mil is a nice focal length though. And it is the nice focal length, Gilbert, but I'm not sure we need it. Well, you let me know. You might have totally different thinking to me. I think it's too close to the 24. If I had the choice between those two, I would buy the 24, and then you've obviously got the 20 underneath that as well. And Mark said, no, I want the gap fill 105. Yeah, what happened to that? I mean, there was all these rumors about the 105 mil as well, 1.4, but it seems to have disappeared. So that's interesting as well. But I think the 300 definitely due to the Olympics. The 28, I'm not sure about. So source number 4 is saying that I wanted to confirm, add to your RX100 story, the case will see a major redesign in the year. So they're saying that the RX100 is going to have a completely new redesign, and the built-in flash is going to be removed, but a new flash box as big as a matchbox powered by the camera will be introduced. So in other words, it sounds like they're saying that the flash is going to be an external part that you connect as an external flash. And I'm not sure I'm really that happy about that. I do like them being internal in those smaller cameras. They're also saying a new grip tripod with a spare battery will be introduced along with the camera. Now, they're also saying here, now get this, that it will record 4K 60 for 5 minutes. So, that I think I've got a sound effect. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. I don't know if that's the right one. Let me have a look. I've got to find it. Nope, not that one. Yes. Oh, I love it. So what do you think about that? I mean, look, they're saying that it's going to have a 5-minute recording time. I'm quite comfortable with that, and I've spoken to you about that before, that I'm really comfortable if Sony brought out a 5-minute recording of that, because like I said, I only put things in for 10 to 15 seconds when I'm shooting video. So that I would be quite comfortable with that. So that's interesting that they're saying that. Now they're saying if that's the case, it has to come in the next full frame camera. If they're saying that's going to be in the RX100, it has to come in it. They're also saying that it says USB-C is accompanied by a mic and headphone jack. So it looks like it's going to be a USB-C that you connect the head and microphone jack through the same port. So that's interesting. And introduction of a new live streaming mode via wireless LAN. So in other words, you're going to be able to do wireless LAN direct streaming for YouTube and things like that. So it seems like an interesting camera. I mean, new beauty mode built in video. I mean, honestly, who wants that? That's just a complete load of, you know what I mean. The skin softening, those beauty modes, it looks like you've put Vaseline all over the front of the lens. It's terrible. And one additional button on the back. Now, they're saying there'll be 2 versions of this, one with a 20 to 200 mil 2.8 and a 16 to 50 1.4. If that was me, I'd be getting the 16 to 50 1.4 if I was a vlogger, that's for sure. Cheers, I'm just having a drink of my Corona. So let me know what you think about that, and I will come over to the chat as well. Source 5 said he's talking about lenses. And they're saying a 27 to 30, I think it is, and a FE 12 to 24 GM. Well, we know, we've already heard that's possibly a case, the 2.8 GM. A 300 2.8 released before the Olympics. Like I said, I've got a feeling that would have probably been put via... it would have been released now if the Olympics were this year. But now that it's next year, I think there's sort of no hurry for that. A 200 2.8 derivative. What do you think about that one? I mean, would you be interested in a 200 2.8? That'd be pretty amazing. But then again, if you've got a 70 to 200, I don't know whether it's really worthwhile. Let me know what you think about that. They're saying it's going to be a derivative of the 135 1.8 GM though, and you know that I love my 135 1.8 GM. I adore that lens. So they're saying there could be a 200 version of it, but a 2.8. I don't really understand that, but let me know in the comments what you think when we come back in the chat. And also a 70 or 85 to 400, a 5, or is it a, I'm not sure what that is there, a 85 to 400 or 500 millimeter f4.5 to 6.3. So they're interesting, those rumours, but this is the one that I thought was really interesting. This said that they've already seen A7 IV prototypes already in the marketplace. So they're already out there in the hands of a few selected testers. So this is interesting, and they're saying it was only an insignificant update, as it was basically the same as the A7R IV with lower resolution and no video upgrades. Let me just put my headphones, because I want to make sure I get the right sound effect for this. All right, so they're saying no video upgrades. Did you hear that? No video upgrades. Oh, no. Now, it also says we would have already had the announcement, but Sony recalled them in February and has gone back to development. So what they're saying here is that they were about to release it in February, but it's gone back to development. And that's probably due to the fact of what Canon have announced. I would think that's what's happened there. It's probably for what Canon have announced. So it's now gone back into development according to this rumor, because Sony have realized that the camera needs to have higher video specs. And this is a given. They are now so far behind in the video side of things that have Sony finally woken up and they've now gone back to development, and that's why they haven't released anything, and they've now taken it all back and they've said that they're going to release the A7 IV this year. But there's more to this. It says here, and it will have 4K 60, 10-bit and ProRes RAW, and they're saying via HDMI. Are you ready for this one? Hang on, I need my headphones. All right, so they're saying 4K 60, 10-bit ProRes only via HDMI. That cannot be serious. There's no way that on earth that they would give us 4K 60 via HDMI. If they did that, I'm hoping that this is wrong. And what it may be is that the ProRes option RAW is probably via HDMI. This should be split up. I think that it will probably be 4K 60 and then you'll probably have 8-bit video. And then perhaps if you want 10-bit ProRes RAW, that part's going to have to go out to HDMI. That's what I think is going to happen here. That's the only thing that makes sense to me in that, you know, I think if you're going to have internal, it's going to be 4K 60, 8-bit. If you want to go to higher bit depths, and if you want to go to other, say, 8K ProRes RAW, etc., you're going to have to go to external. Now, the other thing they're saying here is that there will be an A7S that will offer 8K ProRes RAW, 4K 120 internal, and use CF Express. So according to that article, it's saying there that we're going to get it. This will be the A7S III, in other words. So they're saying here that it will be 8K ProRes RAW, 4K 120 internal. And it says, and use CF Express cards. So that makes sense to me. So it looks like we're going to get two versions of this camera. And I was thinking, this is why I'm wondering whether there's two ways this can come out. It could be that we have an A7 IV that replaces everything, and that could be replacing the A7S version as well as the A7 III, and it might just be called the A7 IV or whatever they want to call it. Or we're going to get two versions of this. It might be that we get the A7 IV, which is 4K 60, and it's limited at that. And if you want to go higher bit depths, you've got to use an external monitor, but that would be for the 10-bit and ProRes. And then the A7S III would be offer 8K ProRes RAW, 4K internal, and it will use CF Express cards. Now, if that uses CF Express cards, it's going to have a bit a bigger body, because I don't think that can fit in the normal size body of the Sony cameras. I don't think there's any way you could fit a CF Express and a normal SD card into the Sony body as it is. I mean, do you agree with that, guys? Or is it, let me know in the comments and we can talk about that in the live chat as well. The last thing on that was they're just saying that this Source 7 is saying that they think that the A7S III is going to be announced in July, as you have mentioned, as planned, and the release date is early mid to September. So there's a few comments there, but I don't know. It seems to be all over the place. I mean, it is all over the place with these rumors, and it's interesting to see what's happening. Whether these are just guesses coming out, I'm not sure what's sort of going on there. But if that's true about the CF Express cards, they're going to have a larger body, because it's just not going to fit in. And remember, I think for Sony to produce 8K anyway, if they're going to produce 8K ProRes RAW and 4K 120 internal, I think they're going to have a larger body, because they're going to have overheating issues. There's no way I think they can get around that. If you look at the SH1 with the fans and stuff like that. Remember, the Canon version, the R5 that's going to be coming out, is a much bigger body, so that possibly is able to get that heat away, and we don't know what sensors they're using and things like that, and processors and stuff like that. So let's go over to the chat, because I'm curious to see what you guys are saying about all of these rumors. Let me come down to where we're starting. All right, so let's go down. Most people are just saying good evening. Gilbert says, what about a new 50 1.8 Mark II version? I do think, Gilbert, we are going to see Mark II versions of the Sony lenses. They could drop almost any time, probably. I mean, we don't know. They may not be announced that much. They probably wouldn't want to affect sales of the lenses that they've already got there. I can tell you which ones I believe definitely should be upgraded. They should definitely upgrade the 85. The 1.4 should be upgraded to a Mark II, because it needs the linear focus motors of the 135. So that should definitely be updated. The 2470 also should be updated to the new linear motors, and also the 70-200. They're lenses that I would do immediately. I think they're needed if you compare them to, say, what we're getting in the primes, and say even the Tamron lenses. Now, remember, if you're dealing with, say, the 70-200, the Tamron lens is sharper than what that 70-200 is. If you look at most of the reviews out there, they're saying that, or it's very, very similar. Now, if you're looking at the price you're paying for the GM as against, say, paying for the Tamron, there has to be a big difference between how those two lenses work for you to justify paying, double the money. If you look at the Sigma lens, the Sigma 2470, that's sharper than the Sony 2470. So again, the 2470 could also have a version 2 as well. So I think you're probably going to find that, remember, Sony have got better and better and better at the lenses as they've gone on. Look at how the 24 GM, how sharp that is. Look at the Sony 20mm 1.8. Look at the 135 GM. That's often rated as one of the sharpest lenses out there. So clearly Sony have upped their lens quality as time have gone on, and that's to be expected. They're going to get better and better, just like Tamron, just like Sigma and everyone else has. So remember too that Nikon have done it, Canon have done it. They're up to version 3s or whatever of their 70-200s and things like that. So there will be updates to those lenses. And I think they're needed. Like I said, the 85 1.4 is a good lens, but it's very slow if you compare it to, say, how the Sony 1.8 version is of that lens, or even the Batis. And if they put linear motors in that lens, it would be incredible. So, there's definitely room for improvement to, say, put version 2 in. And like you said, the 50 1.8 would be interesting as well. Mark said too, the 105 f1.4. I know that seems to have disappeared. I don't know where that's gone. We heard rumors about that ages ago, and it's never eventuated, which is really bizarre. Cheers. Aaron said, it's funny because the XT3 came out. We said Sony needs to answer that, and that was years later. Yeah, I know, Aaron. I agree with you. Sony did not even answer the XT3 yet, let alone the XT4. Yeah, I'm not sure what Sony are doing in that regard. It's really interesting. Remember when, and this is really bizarre, because when the A7 III came out, and early on with, say, the A6300 and stuff like that, Sony was so far ahead of everyone else out there. I'm talking about for the camera specs in general, like overall. I'm not just talking about stills. I'm talking about everything that was sort of involved. But then they sort of have rested a little bit from that, and they've done incremental upgrades. I know some of you seem to think that it's been massive upgrades, but I don't count the A7R III and the A7R4 as a massive advancement. Yes, it's more megapixels, but it's not what you'd call a huge advancements. It's more an evolution of that camera. That's what I believe. You may disagree, but that's what I believe. So they are definitely due to release something that, again, makes us go wow again. And, and I'm looking forward to that day, that's for sure. Torben said a 24 1.8 would be great. Interesting, Torben. George said, don't need more rumours. What I do need is more great image quality and a compact, lightweight, affordable package. Yeah, I mean, I agree. You're right, George. You can use whatever you've got. But this show is particularly about that, so we discuss all this sort of stuff. So, I mean, if you're not really interested in rumours, this may not be the show for you. This one, you might be better with Aaron and myself's video where we talk about more general sort of things, because this is more the Sony Alpha News and Rumours show. So, Michelle said, but I agree with you, George. You can get amazing image quality from what you've already got now. Michelle said, agree, Gilbert, on a more budget-friendly 50 1.4 like Canon and Nikon, but actually sharp. Yeah, because the other one is not very sharp, is it? Gerald said the 28 GM is not needed. 300 2.8 is needed to fill in sports. A 12 to 24 2.8 will be nice too. And g'day, Jerry. How are you? I agree with that comment completely, Jerry, as well. Brett said 105 1.4 G master lens, definitely. And there is an advantage to the 105. Like when I used the Sigma version of that 105 lens, it was amazing because it could let you use it inside. The 135 is often too large. The working distance is too large unless you're just doing head sort of and shoulders. It's too great with the 135. A 105 is much more than a 135 is. So it would be a great lens. I agree with you, Brett. Guy with the camera said the X-T3 had battery issues, so it wasn't clear head and shoulders above the A600, but now with the X-T4, it's totally it's a totally head. Okay, you're saying it's a totally complete package. Sony needs to bite the bullet and make a bigger body for heat issues. I agree. I think, look, I love the smaller body and I do love that, but I'm willing to carry around a larger body if it means that I can have that 4K 60 as a minimum and hopefully 10-bit. So I agree with you. It probably is getting to the point where Sony have to decide that they're going to have to make a larger body. I agree with you completely on that now. I love the smaller cameras. I mean, I don't want them to go up to like a D6 size camera, but I'd love them to be slightly larger. They may be able to just make it a little bit larger that just lets the heat get away. Also, if they are going to go to CF Express cards, I think that's going to have to be a given anyway. Aaron said, not talking about the battery, it's a Kodak in the frames per second. Yep, I know what you were saying, Aaron. Brett said, yes, and a 14mm 1.8 or a 1.4 G Master. Yeah, that'd be nice too. It's really the only thing that Sony are missing for me at this stage is a lovely wide-angle lens. Like I said, I'd love a 12 or a 14mm that, had autofocus. I'd love that. And if it was like the GM, it would be amazing. I really would love them to bring out a lens like that. New beauty mode. I know, I love it. It's a classic. Langston said, such a lazy idea to stream via wireless LAN and put a USB-C port on it. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, isn't it, Langston? I'm not sure about that either. Jim said, thumbs up. Yes, love it if you could give me a thumbs up, guys. Michelle said, Torben, I love the Sigma 1.4. Oh, we just got a donation. Let me just come back to here. I think it was Panda. Oh, thank you so much, Panda. He's called me, I'm his father. My father, David Oastler, you are done with my camera now, laugh out loud. Please return it. My RX 15mm leads it now. I just saw a video that the Panda put on this morning where he was unboxing his new RX lens, the 15mm. It looks lovely. He's going to be using that on his travel going around the west coast of the USA, I think. So he's heading out on Saturday, I believe. Thanks so much, Panda. You didn't need to do that, though. Where were we? Up here somewhere. Just trying to find where we were. Here we go. So Michelle said, I love the Sigma 50 1.4 image quality, but way too heavy and bulky. Yeah, the 50 1.4 is amazing, that Sigma lens. It is. It's amazing, and it's really sharp. The 35 Sigma lens is incredible too. That 35 1.4 is a dream lens. As long as you don't mind carrying around that weight, it's stunning. Good wide angle, Gilbert said as well he would like. Langston said, who the hell is designing this camera? I love it. Brett said 135 1.8 G Master lens is outstanding. It is, Brett. It's incredible. It's my favourite lens that I've got. That and the 24 1.4 GM I love as well. I adore them. Langston said, it's sad that rumour specs don't make me happy. I love it. What else have we got? No video upgrades. I know it's a downer. Gilbert said, if Sony brings out an A7 IV without a video upgrade, that would be a mistake. I just cannot believe that Sony would do that, Gilbert. I really cannot believe that would happen. If that happens, I'm going to be on and I better have another drink. Here we go. I might have to have another one after this. If Sony do that, I'm going to drink a slab. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know in America what a slab is, but it means I'm going to drink 12 of these Coronas. I'm going to get into it. So is it 12 or 24? I'm not sure. I've gone blank. Mark said, I'm expecting Sony to be using the new full-frame body design in their A7Ss as it makes much more production sense. Yeah, I agree, Mark. Torben also said to Michelle, he's answering Michelle, absolutely, I had one too and loved the output, but yes, way too heavy. I sold it and I got the Samyang 45 1.8 instead. Got much the same yumminess like the 45 too. Remember, Samyang have also just brought out that 75 as well. I very rarely use Samyang lenses, so I'm not sure how they really are. I know Gilbert swears by them. And obviously Torben is also using them too. It'd be great if one of you guys could get the 75 because that would be a great one to have a look at. I think Altric's having a go at me for using those sounds. I love it. Aaron said he loved the sounds. I might use them much, but it's perfect if like Sony do the wrong thing and I can just bring in. I love it. You know what my sense of humour is like, guys? What's this? Dwayne said, hey, I'm having vodka shots. So Dwayne's having vodka shots. So glad you all came to San Francisco. I just got promoted. I'll be a supervisor now. Our time was epic. Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations, Dwayne. So happy for you. If you don't know, Dwayne took us all around San Francisco on his cable car trams. We had an absolute ball. Loved it. And I'll remember that forever, Dwayne. Let's see what else people are saying. Michelle said, wow, Torben, didn't Sigma come out with the 45 2.8 a while back? I didn't know I needed it. I just bought the Sony 35 1.8. Love that lens. Yeah, that's a nice lens. Gilbert said he's switching to Canon. I love it. Dwayne said, would you do Nikon or EOS R? You're talking about if I was buying now? I would be waiting and seeing what the R5 is like when it's released, Dwayne. But I think, like I said, if Sony don't answer that camera, that may be one that I jump in to get. I'm not switching from Sony, but I may get the EOS R5 for the video features. I may get that. But I'm waiting, luckily at this stage, like everyone else out there, we're short on money. So I'm not in that position at this stage to get it anyway. But later on in the year, if weddings start to pick up and things like that, it might be that I jump in and get the EOS R5. But stay tuned and I'll let you all know. Just checking what some other comments have said down here. Has anyone ever used Leica lenses with Sony? No, I haven't, Casper, so I haven't done that. What What else have we got? David, great to see you using Rode products, Australian-made Pro products. Exactly, Brett. It is. It's all Rode. I had, guys, just to explain what happened there too, I had I'm a musician, so I had two Universal Audio cards. They're very, very expensive capture cards. A friend of mine who was also a musician, wanted one of those cards, so he bought it off me, and with the money that I sold that for, I could buy the Rode Procaster Pro and also this Rode microphone as well. So it gave me the whole setup, and I didn't have to spend any money for it. I just transferred the money over, so it was fantastic, and I was so happy. But yes, Rode are an amazing Australian company. Hector, wow, thank you so much. Hector, hang on, I've got to put a sound effect on here. I've got to find the cheering one. Where are we? Oh, not the crickets. Oh, no, hang on. Yes, Hector. I will start to use what these are. I love it. Hector, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and I love that. It's thanks for being you. I've got a little icon there which has come up. I love it. Thank you so much, Hector. I really appreciate that. Where were we? What else? Scott Dan said, I really want the 24 GM. Yeah, I love that, Scott. It's amazing, the 24 GM. A 51.8 has a slow, loud focus motor. I really need an update. Like I said, my two favourite lenses are the 135 and also the 24 GM are my two favourite lenses that I've got. Let me just scroll down and see where we're up to. Do you think the A9 will get another firmware update? It's hard to say, Altric. I'm hoping so. But who knows? I mean, Sony haven't been that fantastic with giving upgrades. They're certainly not like Fuji are and Panasonic are. Canon seem to be throwing out some firmware updates at the moment. Now, you're going to hate this, guys, because Canon have just put out a firmware update that I believe gives you stop motion or something, but it's a paid update. I wouldn't even mind, and I know some of you are going to hate me saying this, but I would not mind if Sony gave us a really good firmware upgrade, but it was a paid upgrade. I would pay for it. Like, for instance, if you had your A7 III and then they said, look, we'd like to offer this firmware upgrade of giving you the color for your focus icon. You know how at the moment we can't change it. You can on the A9, but you can't on the A7 III, and it would cost this much money. I would be willing to pay for it. I know some of you are going to say that should never happen, but I would be willing to pay for decent firmware upgrades as long as it was substantial. Like, for instance, if they said to me on the A9 we were going to add 4K 60 for $100, I'd pay that in a heartbeat. I mean, I'd love to know your opinion about that, but, would you be willing to pay for firmware updates? Let me know. You're probably going to say I'm mad for saying that. John said, so I'm not sure, Altric, whether we're going to get any more A9 firmware updates now, unfortunately. They'll probably just do the A9 II. John said, I'm late to the party. Well, at least you're here, John. What else have we got? Just scrolling down here. Panda gave me that donation. Thank you so much for that, Panda. I'm just trying to see if anyone has... Panda said he's drinking as well. Colin said an A7 IV with no video upgrades is an A7 III. I hope they don't do that. If they just put that into the A7R4 body and basically keep it the same, I'll be screaming. I hope that's not the case. I really do. That would be terrible. What else have we got? Gene says, I've got the 50 and the 85 1.4 Rocky and Samyang lens, and they're both excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Gene. I know Gilbert loves his Samyang lenses. Aaron has them too, actually. Aaron has some great images on his Facebook page and stuff, and I think even on his YouTube channel talking about the Samyang lenses. Wosley said, my A7 III is my best camera so far, would never consider giving Canon another shot. Gilbert also said he will test it for sure. How did you go with it? Have you heard back about your lens problem? Gilbert dropped his lens and broke it. He was getting a quote or something back from Samyang on that. Have you had anything about that yet, Gilbert? Thank you so much, Hector, for that donation. Panda saying we can rob a bank together so we can afford the Canon camera. Oh, dear. Jim said, here is a 4-second bite for you. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure what that is. John said, what about a firmware upgrade on the full touch screen? Oh, yeah, exactly, John, but I don't know whether it's possible. Remember, I showed you last week in the live that there was some problems with, if you compared the Sony resolution of the back screen to, say, Nikon, the EOS R cameras, and also the Z6 cameras and Z7, the Sony screen on the back is half the resolution of what those other two cameras are. And also, the touch interface is terrible. Now, it must be a touch interface because you can do some touching, like touch to focus and things like that. So, yes, I agree with you there that they probably could do it in a firmware upgrade. Now, whether there's the processing power there to do it, I don't know. But, yes, I would pay for that. That's one thing that I would pay for. Torben said, wouldn't it be a good theme for video? You getting the line of Samyang AF lenses to see how you would like them. The problem is it's for me getting them, Torben. See, as I'm an Australian, it's tough. It's a lot easier if in the USA to get lenses and stuff like that sent to you, like from B&H and things like that. Here, it's a nightmare trying to get things sent to you. Brett said, Aaron said, use my Samyang and love them. Brett also said, I've always said it from the beginning of the A7 III, I would pay for more features. Gene also said, I would pay for a firmware upgrade if they update my A7 400 to 32 megapixels. I don't think that's possible. What else? Jim said, that soundbite is you. Oh, okay. Oh, no. What have you done? I'm not going to click on it. I daren't. It'll take me out of this anyway. So Sony basically needs to give us an EOS R5 with an E mount. Don't care about the 8K, but all other, is that Cedo? That might be cinema features or something look awesome. Plus a megapixel count and the ability to get medium and small RAW format in there as well. Gilbert also said he hasn't heard back from Samyang yet. David, would be a good touch. David, but would the touch be as good as cameras with already built-in touch? Well, they certainly can. It depends, Haz, how much is available to do it through that. If it is a full touch screen that's just not been activated, yes. Remember, they just did that with the FX9. When that was first released, it didn't have any touch features enabled. And they didn't even say that was a touch screen enabled screen like that. They added that firmware upgrade, which is going to come out in October, I believe, and that's given it full touch functionality, including menus. So Sony have proven there that they can do it. All right, so let's go on to the next story. Down here, that's a Sony vlogging camera. What are we on, 51? 5130. So this next story that's coming out is they're saying it's a wild rumor, but it may fit into what they were saying about in those other rumors that I showed before about a new sort of vlogging camera coming out. So they're saying here that Sony will announce a new ZV-1. I suppose it's pronounced like that, not ZV-1. Who knows? I mean, I'd say Z, but sometimes like the Nikon Z, they say Z now. So if it was the ZV-1 or the ZV-1, I don't know how they'll call it, but it's a compact vlogger camera is going to be announced on May the 26th. Now, it wasn't, was it? So we don't know. But is this still coming? Because I'm interested to know. Sorry, we're only in, we're not up there yet. I'm thinking it's May. It is May, but not that time yet. So they're saying this is going to come out on May the 26th or be announced on May the 26th. Now, it's going to be interesting. They're saying 10 a.m. New York time. It's going to be perfect for the vlogger. Now, they're saying, I'm not sure yet this rumor is legit. But a second source was right on the rumor about the new bulletproof Bluetooth handle. That's what they're saying, bulletproof, the new Bluetooth handle. So there's a fair chance that they may be right. So do you think this is the case? This looks like sort of similar to an RX camera. So I did read before that they were saying that they're going to rename. It actually says here, I would personally find it weird if they changed the RX naming to the ZV or the ZV. But maybe that camera is much more than an RX-style selfie camera. So it's interesting. It looks to me like it's just an updated RX camera with a new naming convention. So this is probably the one that they were talking about before that could have 4K 60 for 5 minutes in it with the USB attachments and stuff like that. But you know, it's still not the perfect vlogging type shape because there's no hot shoe looking at that. And this is why I think This may be that camera they were talking about before, but where do you mount an external microphone onto this camera? It's a bit interesting in its design. I'm sure Small Rig may come out with something, but it's going to have to be put in a cage. If you're looking at that video, it sort of shows it with no jacks at all, like your flash jack there or anything like that you could stick in a microphone to. So let me know what you think about that as well. I'm going to keep going before we open up Q&A, guys, because this is talking about the Canon 1DX versus the Sony A9 II 54. Do you think there's a need for that new vlogging camera? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments as well what you think about that. I mean, I think personally the A6400 is probably all you need, or the A6600, but I'd love to know your opinion about that. What are we, 54, 40. So the last one I'm going to show you is this. This is a test. Now, this is really interesting, and I'm going to talk about this. It's not as bad as it seems, but it could be for certain scenarios. So this is the rolling shutter test. I'm going to just play you this little bit of a video. I'll just put my headphones on so I can hear it. So let me play this. All right, so it's obviously in Japanese, but I believe the first part of this test is showing... and this is the thing, you can't read it because it's all in Chinese or whatever it is. I think it's Japanese, yeah. So this first part of the test is showing the rolling shutter, but this is the mechanical shutter. And both of them look very good here. Remember, they're both very good in mechanical shutter. The Canon is faster than the A9 though, but when we go to the electronic shutter, you'll see it's a completely different ball game. You'll see here, this is showing the mechanical shutter. Now the mechanical shutter, guys, is not showing any rolling shutter at all. So which means it's sort of like a stretched or put out of shape, this fan that they're showing. Now here, you can see the difference on this one. This is electronic shutter that's being shown here. And if you look at this one, you can see that the Canon 1DX on the left-hand side is showing very bad rolling shutter compared to what the Sony A9 II has. In other words, the fan looks perfectly still on the A9, and it's sort of distorted on the 1DX Mark III. But there's two ways of looking at this too, and I want to discuss this with you because there's one issue why you would use this. If you needed to use flash, you would use mechanical shutter. So then if you're looking at it that way, like I'm not going to bag the Canon here because I actually think that the Canon 1DX is probably the best digital SLR out there, to be completely honest, because it's got everything. It's got amazing, I think it's 16, 17 frames per second in mechanical, and it's got amazing video, like incredible video. It's only in the size of it being much bigger, and also if you want to shoot silent. Now that's important to me. To shoot silent is very important to me because I do a lot of dance photography, and I also do a lot of wedding photography. And having that ability to use a silent shutter where there's no noise at all, it's Chinese, thanks God. I wasn't sure whether it was Chinese or Japanese. The silent shutter is very important because if I need to, say, be totally quiet, for instance, what if you're shooting golf where you're not allowed to shoot while the golfer is doing their swing? Well, you can do that with the A9 or the 1DX in silent shutter, but it shows the 1DX is not going to be acceptable in that if you're looking at what's happened to that fan, which is all blurred and distorted. So the A9 II has a definite advantage if you're going to be using silent shutter. And like I said, that is a big deal to me, but if it's not a big deal to you, then obviously you would just be using the mechanical shutter in the 1DX. So I think that test is very, very interesting if you're dealing with it. Now, I suppose Canon made a little bit of a mistake because they were sort of touting it as this A9 killer with the silent shutter. Well, if looking at that result, it's not if you're dealing with silent shutter at all. But I don't know how many sports shooters are going to be probably using that silent shutter anyway. They'll be using the mechanical shutter, which at 16 frames per second, I think it's 16 or 17, I can't remember, it's about that, but around about that figure is going to be ample for everyone anyway. It's more that if you need to use the silent shutter that the Sony A9 II particularly would streak way ahead, and I showed you those results and it was interesting to look at it in that fan. And Scott said, if I had the A9, I'd probably use the electronic shutter all the time. I do, Scott. I only take it off when I'm using flash. That's the only time I go to mechanical. So let's open up to Q&A. Let me just bring that up. And I'm going to put the time in that we are, which is 58:40. So fire away if you have any questions, guys. We'll answer that. So it can be open to anything that you'd like to ask me at all. What else? Torben says, Gilbert, you've got to tell your Samyang contact that something is cooking here on David's channel and Facebook group. So they really should arrange for him to get their range of AF lenses to test. Yeah, that'd be amazing. I've got no Samyang contacts here at all, unfortunately. Mark said, so the ZV-1 could be an upgrade to the RX100 Yes, I think that's what they're saying, Mark, that's what it is going to be. Now, they're changing the naming convention for some reason. I'm not sure why they would do that. Like Aaron said, I'll pass on it. Well, I would too. I mean, I love my A6400 for the vlogging. I had the RX100 Mark IV, I think it was, 5, 6. Yeah, I think it was the 6 version that I had. And I loved it, but I sold it. I just didn't use it enough. I would always go back to the Sony A6400. I mean, I just like the features that has. I like the lenses. I like the size that it has. I love the way that I can use the small rig sort of attachments and then stick everything on it. I just love everything about that. The only thing I wish it did have was dual cards on it. That's the only thing I really wish that it did have, and a headphone socket. That's probably about all. But yeah. I don't think the A6400 has a headphone socket. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've used it for that, actually, with headphones. Let me keep coming down. Someone may be able to answer in the chat because it's up there. I can't get up to it to have a look. I think it's only got a microphone socket, I think. What else have we got? Gilbert said he'd speak to the UK division, but the main company are pretty approachable. Scott said, if I had the A9, I'd probably use electronic shutter most of the time. Yeah, and like I said, I use the electronic shutter all the time, apart from if I'm using flash. Mark said it's rare that I go out of electronic shutter. Well, just think about it too. You're saving your shutter. Remember, I don't think the A9 has the Sony problem, the A7 III problem with that shutter. I'm just hoping mine never goes, because it seems to be a problem that's out there with the shutter mechanism that's getting cracks in it and failing. That's the one good thing about the A9. If you do shoot in electronic shutter, your shutter's never being used. So there's really no wear and tear on it at all. So it's seriously something that you should think about. I think some people are nervous, but I've never in my shooting really seen banding. I've never in my shooting seen rolling shutter. So you can use it pretty safely. I do say that if you're doing a wedding and you're worried about it, like the lighting is particularly bad, you might want to do a test in that lighting scenario before the wedding to make sure it's safe. Mark said the A9 is not silent shutter, it's electronic shutter. Yep, I always call it silent shutter though. Gerald says the PJ is actually considering making silent shutter mandatory for pro golf tournaments. So no rolling shutter with the A9 and the A9 II would be a great advantage. And it just shows how amazing that sensor is in the A9. I mean, what's that been out now? Is it nearly 3 years? I'm not sure. But that sensor is still as good or better than anything else out there. When you think the 1DX Mark III is a brand new camera, they're top of the line, and it still can't beat the A9 in that electronic shutter. The A9 is incredible what that sensor is. It was way, way ahead of its time. Jim said, found out last night that the minimum ISO is 100 on silent shutter on the A7R III. Common knowledge. Interesting. Well, I never go down below 100 ISO anyway, so I have to check that on the A9. I haven't got them here. John said, I'm looking for a prime lens, 35, 50, 85. Which one is a good all-round lens? You're talking about prime. Well, I think the cheapest 85 that I always recommend is the Sony 85 lens. You might be better off to have a look at the Samyang options, say, for the 50. I'm not sure, does Samyang have a 35? I'm not sure. Yes, they do. Yes, they do have a good 35. So I'll probably look at the Samyang ones as well. I know Aaron loves that Samyang 45 mil. Tom says, anybody have issues with the A7 III shutter breaking? Well, I haven't, Tom, but I know there was a video about that recently, and it does seem to be that it's quite common out there. It's almost, I'm wondering if it starts to happen enough whether Sony should offer a recall on that. Stay tuned, because that's interesting. I think if that starts to get bad enough, they really should do a recall on it and fix it. Gilbert said, I just want someone to find a vaccine for the COVID-19 so we can all go back to what we love. I know exactly, I do too, Gilbert. I've never had a shutter go bad. Silent shutter is amazing, Sev said. Gerald said, I am the same. I shoot electronic shutter all the time with my A9 except for flash. Jim said, so good so far for 4,000 actuations. Mine would be way, way, way higher than that, and it's fine. Scott said, I had someone approach me for a maternity shoot a couple of days ago. We're starting to open up back here. Fantastic, Scott. Altrix said, I'm always shooting using the electronic shutter as well. And Hero said, the Viltrox FE85 1.8 is great too. That would be manual focus though, wouldn't it, Hero? It wouldn't be auto AF. That may be the problem, that, if you don't know or you can't handle manual focusing well enough, that could be a problem. So we're up to the end of the questions, guys. Now, just to remind people, there's another question there too before I go on that. Hector said, have you tested the new 70-180S? Hector, yes, I have. I've done a whole video on it. Check it. You'll be able to go down. It's not that far down my YouTube page. It's amazing. I loved it. In fact, when I've got the money, I will be getting that for sure. I'm definitely thinking about selling my 70-200 f4 for that. Now, if I don't get enough for it by selling it, I might keep the 70-200 f4 as a second 70-200, and then I'll buy the 70-180. It's that good, Hector. Yes, I loved it. Check the video out. It's only a few videos back down, so you'll be able to find it if you scroll through my feed. Absolutely adored it. And for the cost, you can't beat it. Is there any other questions there? That's about it, I think. Hans said the Samyang 50mm is soft. And Carl said, yes, that lens had no AF. Yeah, so it could be a problem. It'll be a problem. Maybe I'll send you another donation so you can get faster. I love it. Gilbert said, Hans, Christian, the Samyang 50mm is a little soft and the AF sucks. Yeah, so that's an issue too, that you need to test these other lenses to make sure that the AF is good enough. Remember, you're always sort of more or less guaranteed if you have the Sony lenses that the AF will be outstanding or really, really good. Tamron and Sigma 2 now tend to be very, very good as well. I think some of the newer Samyangs are really good now, but some of the older ones may be an issue. So you might have to check the lenses out to make sure that they fit your needs enough on that. Now, to sort of summarize, don't forget too that the photography videography school, please join it. It's here. Let me just bring that up if I can bring it up, just so I can show you. File, new window. If I go to Facebook, and let me just bring this up. Once this starts, I'll show it to you. We have a site that is directly related to the photography and videography school. Now, the podcast setup that I'm going to be doing, guys, is going to be called the Photography Videography School. So it's going to be directly related to that. This is the site. It's called Photography. Make sure you use the ampersand there, otherwise you won't be able to join us. Please join us. It's an amazing group. You can see that we put the links on here when we're going to go live. Aaron's show next week will be on there live, and everyone just keeps posting. It's just a fantastic group. We've got a post there from Hannah. He's giving a discount actually for something from Kate Backdrops. He's giving discounts. Sean Pearson's in there showing stuff. It's great. We've got people sharing their videos. Brett Harris is showing a video there as well. We've got some great stuff. So please join us in there. It's a very positive, friendly place. We do not allow any sort of a bullying that goes on in other sites. So please join us. And finally, next week, on the Tuesday, US time, 8 p.m. New York time, we'll be having the Photography Videography show. So please join us there as well, because we'd love you to watch that as well, and I'll probably download it later and put it on my channel. But if you want to join us live to be getting into the comments and things like that, you'll need to obviously come in live. We will put the link in the photography videography school to show when we're sharing it, and hopefully you'll get notifications about when that's coming on. In the next few days, I'm going to be putting up a stack of reviews. I've got some really good stuff coming up from Small Rig. I've got a great little monitor too that I'm going to review as well. And also I've still got those shoots that I've got to show you from the US that still have to be shown, and also a shot with Kiara that I've done as well. So stay tuned, because there's stacks of live shoots and also sort of hardware reviews and things like that that'll be coming up in the coming days. So apart from that, everyone, we'll see you in the next show. So bye, everyone. Don't forget, too, that I'll try and put this up on a podcast, so you'll be able to access it there as well. I might even leave the links when I get that done. I'm not sure how it all works yet, but I will put it up as a podcast as well. Catch you later, everyone. Bye for now.